My name is Ethan Cole, and I used to be what people called a nice guy. That was before I learned that nice guys don't just finish last. They get completely destroyed by the people they trust most. It started on a Friday evening in October. I was sitting in my home office in our modest house on Maple Street in Portland, Maine, debugging code for a client's e-commerce site. The kind of boring, methodical work that pays the bills but doesn't exactly set your soul on fire. Clara, my wife of 3 years, had texted around 5 saying she'd be running late at the office again. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. Third time this week. Her PR firm, Meridian Communications, apparently demanded more overtime than a surgical residency. I glanced at the framed photo on my desk, Clara and me at our wedding, both grinning like idiots. She looked stunning in her white dress, blonde hair cascading over her shoulders, blue eyes sparkling with what I'd foolishly believed was genuine love. I looked like exactly what I was, a slightly awkward software engineer who couldn't believe he'd landed someone so far out of his league. Apparently PR stands for panties removed, I muttered to my empty house, then immediately felt guilty for the thought. But something nagged at me. Clara's phone had been buzzing constantly the past few weeks, and she'd started taking calls in the other room. When I'd asked about it, she'd laughed it off. Just work drama, honey. You know how it is. I didn't know how it was. I worked alone, writing code, solving problems with logic and patience. Drama wasn't part of my vocabulary. Around 9 p.m., I decided to track Clara's phone using Find My iPhone. We'd shared our locations years ago for practical reasons. If one of us got lost or had car trouble, perfectly innocent, perfectly legal. The little blue dot wasn't at her office on Congress Street. It was at the Eastland Park Hotel downtown. I stared at the screen, my stomach dropping like an elevator with cut cables. There had to be an explanation. Maybe a client meeting, a work event she'd forgotten to mention. But as I sat there in the growing darkness, listening to the old house creak around me, I knew better. 3 years of marriage teaches you to recognize the sound of lies, even when they're wrapped in perfectly reasonable explanations. I closed my laptop and walked to the kitchen, pouring myself 3 fingers of bourbon. The good stuff, the bottle we'd been saving for a special occasion, seemed like tonight qualified. My phone buzzed. Clara. Sorry, baby, still stuck here. Don't wait up. Love you. I typed back. Love you too. Drive safe. Then I deleted our wedding song from my playlist. Saturday morning brought the kind of crisp Maine autumn that usually lifted my spirits. Today, it just felt cold. Clara had come home around midnight, slipping into bed with whispered apologies about client emergencies and last-minute presentations. I'd pretended to be asleep. She left early for a team brunch, kissing my forehead with lips that tasted like guilt and expensive wine. I watched from our bedroom window as she drove away in her silver Honda Civic, then immediately felt pathetic for spying on my own wife. I needed information, and I knew exactly who might have it. Mia Turner had been Clara's best friend since college. She ran an event planning business downtown and had the kind of sharp tongue that could fillet a person in 3 sentences. More importantly, she was the repository for all of Clara's secrets. If something was happening, Mia would know. I texted her around noon. Hey Mia, want to grab coffee? Been too long. Her response came back immediately. About time you reached out. Cafe Luna, 2 p.m., we need to talk. The certainty in that last sentence made me freeze. Cafe Luna sat in the Arts District, all exposed brick and reclaimed wood, the kind of place where Portland's creative class gathered to discuss their latest projects over overpriced lattes. I found Mia at a corner table, her dark hair pulled back in a severe bun, brown eyes sharp as broken glass. You look like hell, she said without preamble. Thanks. You're a real confidence booster. I sat down across from her, noting how she'd positioned herself with a view of the entire cafe. Mia never liked being surprised. How long have you known? She asked. The question hit me like a physical blow. No dancing around it, no pretense. Just straight to the heart of the matter. Known what, exactly? Mia leaned forward, her voice dropping to just above a whisper. Don't play dumb, Ethan. It doesn't suit you. How long have you known about Clara and Ryan? Ryan Blake, sales executive at Meridian Communications. Tall, handsome, the kind of guy who'd never had to work for anything in his life because it had all been handed to him on a silver platter. I suspected yesterday, I admitted. Confirmed it this morning when I found a hotel receipt in her purse. Mia's expression softened slightly. I'm sorry, Ethan. I really am. How long? 3 months, maybe 4. She stirred her latte absently. She told me everything. How exciting it was, how alive Ryan made her feel, how you'd become predictable. The word hit like a slap. Predictable. 3 years of being a faithful husband, of working my ass off to pay for our mortgage and her student loans, of being there whenever she needed me, and I'd become predictable. She said that? Among other things. Mia's voice carried an edge I couldn't quite identify. Clara's always been good at justifying her choices. Remember junior year when she cheated on that boyfriend? What was his name? Marcus? She convinced herself it was his fault for being too clingy. I'd forgotten about that, or maybe I'd chosen not to remember. Why are you telling me this? I asked. Mia was quiet for a long moment, watching the steam rise from her cup. Because I'm tired of being Clara's confessor. I'm tired of listening to her justify hurting people who care about her. And because... She looked up at me. Because you deserve better than being made a fool of. What do you know? Everything. The hotel meetings, the late-night texts, the way Ryan struts around the office like he's conquered something. They're not even trying to be discreet anymore. Her voice hardened. Clara thinks she's untouchable, that she can have her stable husband at home and her exciting lover on the side, and nobody will ever call her on it. I felt something cold and hard crystallizing in my chest. Not just anger, something more focused, more dangerous. There's a company party next Friday, Mia continued. Big client event at the Eastland Park. Clara and Ryan will both be there, playing their little game in front of everyone. And? Mia smiled, and for the first time since I'd sat down, it reached her eyes. And maybe it's time someone turned the tables, made them feel what it's like to be humiliated in front of people they care about impressing. I leaned back in my chair, studying her face. You want to help me? I want to help you destroy them, she said simply. Clara's betrayed every friendship she's ever had when it became inconvenient. She threw me under the bus with our college roommate, cost me a client last year when she poached them from Meridian, and now she's doing this to you. I'm done being Switzerland. I thought about it for exactly 3 seconds. The old Ethan, the nice guy, the predictable husband, would have walked away. Would have confronted Clara privately, maybe suggested marriage counseling, definitely gotten his heart broken quietly and with dignity. But the old Ethan was gone. He died last night when I saw that blue dot at the hotel. What did you have in mind? I asked. Mia's smile turned predatory. Leave that to me. But Ethan, when this is over, there won't be any going back. Are you sure you want to do this? I thought about Clara slipping into bed beside me, whispering lies about client emergencies. I thought about Ryan Blake, probably laughing with his buddies about the clueless husband. I thought about 3 years of being faithful, supportive, and apparently predictable. I'm sure, I said. The next week passed in a blur of careful preparation and mounting rage. I went through the motions of normal married life, making dinner, asking about Clara's day, pretending I didn't notice how she lit up whenever her phone buzzed with a text. But underneath the surface, I was planning. Mia proved to be a valuable ally. She fed me information about Clara's schedule, her conversations, her growing confidence that she was getting away with everything. More importantly, She had access to the company party planning and could ensure I'd be able to get in. Ryan's hosting, she told me during one of our coffee meetings. It's his big chance to impress the senior partners. He's been bragging about it for weeks. I'd also reached out to Derek Morrison, my old college roommate who'd left the Portland Police Department to start a private security firm. Derek was built like a linebacker and had the kind of quiet competence that came from years of dealing with the worst humanity had to offer. "You sure about this?" he asked when I explained what I needed. We were sitting in his office, a sparse room above a bail bondsman on Forest Avenue. "I'm sure. Because once we do this, there's no putting the genie back in the bottle. Your marriage is over either way, but this is going to leave scorched earth." "Good," I said, and meant it. Derek studied my face for a long moment, then nodded. "Okay, but we do this smart. No violence, nothing that could come back on you legally. We destroy their reputations, not their bodies." "Agreed." He leaned back in his chair. "What do you need?" "GPS tracker for Clara's car, something to monitor her phone, and I need you at the party Friday night, just in case things get physical." "The GPS is easy, magnetic unit, completely legal since it's your car too. The phone monitoring, that's trickier. I can't hack it, but if you can get physical access, I can handle that part." Derek opened his desk drawer and pulled out a small black device about the size of a matchbox. "This goes under the car. Battery lasts 2 weeks, updates every 30 seconds. And this," he handed me a USB drive. "If you can plug this into her computer for about 60 seconds, it'll copy her browser history, saved passwords, the works. Not admissible in court, but useful for intelligence gathering." I pocketed both devices. "What do I owe you?" "Nothing. Consider it a favor between friends. But Ethan?" He leaned forward. "Make sure you can live with whatever you're about to do. Revenge has a way of changing people." I thought about that as I drove home. Was I changing? Absolutely. But Clara and Ryan had started that process when they decided to make me a laughingstock. I was just finishing what they'd begun. That evening, while Clara was in the shower, I plugged Derek's USB drive into her laptop. 60 seconds later, I had access to 3 months of emails, text messages, and browser history. The details were worse than I'd imagined. They'd been planning weekend getaways. Clara had looked up divorce lawyers. Ryan had sent her explicit photos and messages that made my skin crawl. Worst of all, they'd been laughing about me. Actual conversations about poor Ethan and his boring programmer life. In one exchange, Ryan had written, "Does he suspect anything?" Clara's response, "Ethan, please, he's too busy with his computers to notice anything. I could probably bring you home for dinner, and he'd just ask if you wanted to see his latest project." I sat in my home office, reading through months of betrayal and mockery, feeling the last vestiges of the nice guy I'd been crumble away. They thought I was weak, oblivious, pathetic. They were about to learn how wrong they were. Friday arrived with the kind of cold rain that makes October in Maine feel like a preview of the coming winter. Clara spent an hour getting ready for the company party, trying on 3 different dresses before settling on a black cocktail number that hugged her curves in all the right places. "How do I look?" she asked, spinning in front of our bedroom mirror. "Beautiful," I said, and meant it. She was beautiful. It was her soul that had turned ugly. "I probably won't be home until late," she said, not meeting my eyes. "These client events tend to run long." "I'm sure they do." She kissed my cheek, a brief, perfunctory peck, and headed for the door. I watched from the window as she drove away, then checked my phone. The GPS tracker showed her heading downtown toward the Eastland Park Hotel. I showered, shaved, and put on my best suit. A charcoal gray number I'd bought for our wedding and rarely wore since. If I was going to destroy my marriage, I wanted to look good doing it. Mia picked me up at 8:30, looking stunning in a red dress that made her look like she could start wars. "Ready for this?" she asked, as we drove through the rain-slicked streets of downtown Portland. "I've been ready all week." "Good, because once we walk into that hotel, there's no backing down. Clara's going to see us together, and she's going to lose her mind." I smiled, feeling a cold satisfaction settle in my chest. "That's the idea." The Eastland Park Hotel's grand ballroom was exactly the kind of place where Portland's business elite gathered to see and be seen. Crystal chandeliers cast warm light over tables draped in white linen, while floor-to-ceiling windows offered views of the harbor beyond. A jazz quartet played softly in one corner, and servers circulated with trays of champagne and hors d'oeuvres. Mia and I entered together, her hand resting lightly on my arm. I spotted Clara immediately. She was near the bar, laughing at something Ryan Blake was whispering in her ear. He had his hand on the small of her back, a possessive gesture that made my jaw clench. "There they are," Mia murmured. "God, they're not even trying to hide it." Clara looked radiant in her black dress, her blonde hair swept up in an elegant chignon. She was playing the part of the successful PR executive perfectly, charming clients and colleagues with practiced ease. Ryan stood beside her like he belonged there, tall and confident in his expensive suit. They looked like the perfect couple, which I supposed they were. "Showtime," Mia said, steering me toward the bar. We ordered drinks, bourbon for me, martini for her, and began to circulate. Mia introduced me to several of her clients, and I played the part of the charming husband, making small talk about business and the weather. But I kept one eye on Clara and Ryan, watching as they moved through the room like they owned it. It took Clara 20 minutes to notice us. I was talking to a city councilman about the challenges of municipal IT systems when I felt eyes on me. I looked up to see Clara staring at us from across the room, her face a mask of confusion and growing alarm. "Excuse me," I told the councilman, and walked over to where Mia was chatting with a group of event planners. "Dance?" I asked, extending my hand. "I thought you'd never ask," Mia replied with a smile that could have melted steel. The dance floor was small but elegant, surrounded by tables full of Portland's business community. As Mia and I moved together to a slow jazz standard, I could feel the weight of curious stares. We made an attractive couple, her dark beauty a perfect counterpoint to my more understated appearance. "She's watching," Mia whispered in my ear, "and she looks like she's about to have a stroke." I spun Mia gently, catching a glimpse of Clara's face over her shoulder. My wife had gone pale, her champagne glass forgotten in her hand. Ryan was talking to her, but she wasn't listening. Her entire attention was focused on us. "Perfect," I murmured. We danced for 2 more songs, playing up the intimacy, laughing at private jokes, acting like 2 people who were completely comfortable with each other, which I realized we were. Mia was sharp, funny, and refreshingly honest. Everything Clara used to be before she decided that lying was easier than dealing with her problems. When the song ended, I escorted Mia back to the bar, my hand resting on her lower back in a mirror of Ryan's earlier gesture with Clara. We ordered another round and continued our conversation, heads close together, looking for all the world like we were sharing secrets. That's when Clara finally snapped. She crossed the room like a woman on a mission, Ryan trailing behind her with a confused expression. Her heels clicked against the marble floor with sharp staccato beats that sounded like gunshots. "Ethan," she said, her voice tight with barely controlled fury. "What are you doing here?" I turned to face her with what I hoped was an expression of mild surprise. "Clara, I didn't expect to see you here. Mia invited me, said it would be good for me to get out of the house." Clara's gaze flicked between Mia and me, her blue eyes blazing. "I thought you had work to do tonight." "I finished early. You know how it is with programming. Sometimes the code just flows." I gestured to Mia. Lucky for me, Mia had an extra invitation. "How convenient," Clara said, her voice dripping with sarcasm. Ryan stepped forward, extending his hand with practiced corporate charm. "I don't think we've met. Ryan Blake, Meridian Communications. I shook his hand, noting the firm grip and expensive watch. Ethan Cole, Clara's husband. Something flickered in Ryan's eyes, surprise maybe, or recognition. He'd probably heard about me from Clara, though I doubted the descriptions had been flattering. "Pleasure to meet you," he said smoothly. "Clara talks about you all the time." "I'm sure she does," I replied, my tone neutral. An awkward silence stretched between the four of us. Clara looked like she was about to explode, Ryan seemed confused by the tension, and Mia was watching everything with barely concealed amusement. "Well," Mia said finally, "this is cozy. Clara, you look absolutely stunning tonight. That dress is perfect on you." "Thank you," Clara replied stiffly. "And Ryan, I love what you've done with the event. Very sophisticated." Mia's smile was sharp enough to cut glass. "Though I have to ask, don't you have a wife? I could have sworn Clara mentioned—" Ryan's face went red. She couldn't make it tonight. Work commitment." "How unfortunate. I'm sure she would have loved to meet Clara. They seem to have so much in common." The barb hit its mark. Clara's hand tightened around her champagne glass, and for a moment I thought she might throw it. Ryan looked like he wanted to disappear into the floor. "If you'll excuse us," Clara said through gritted teeth, "Ryan and I need to check on the catering." They walked away quickly, Clara's posture rigid with anger. I watched them go, feeling a cold satisfaction settle in my chest. "That went well," Mia said, raising her martini in a mock toast. "Better than I hoped. Did you see Ryan's face when you mentioned his wife?" "Priceless. I don't think he expected to be called out so directly." She took a sip of her drink. "Clara's going to lose her mind. She's not used to being the one who's embarrassed." I glanced around the ballroom, noting how several people were watching us with curious expressions. Word would spread quickly through Portland's tight-knit business community. By Monday, everyone would be talking about Clara Martin's husband showing up to her company party with her best friend. "Phase 1 complete," I said. "What's Phase 2? I smiled, feeling the last vestiges of the nice guy I'd been disappear completely. "We make them famous." The rest of the party passed in a blur of strategic socializing and carefully orchestrated public displays of intimacy. Mia and I worked the room like a seasoned political couple, charming clients and colleagues, while Clara and Ryan watched from across the ballroom with growing frustration. I could see Clara trying to maintain her professional composure, but cracks were showing. She laughed too loudly at clients' jokes, drank too much champagne, and kept shooting venomous glances in our direction. Ryan, meanwhile, looked increasingly uncomfortable as more people asked about his wife's work commitment. Around 11 p.m., as the party was winding down, Derek Morrison appeared at my elbow like a well-dressed shadow. "Everything going according to plan?" he asked quietly. "Better than expected. Clara's about to blow a gasket." "Good, because I've got news about our friend Ryan." Derek's expression was grim. "I did some digging like you asked. Turns out he's got a pattern. This isn't his first workplace affair." "Oh?" "3 jobs in the last 5 years. Always the same story. Starts something with a colleague. Things get messy, he moves on to the next company. Classic predator behavior." I felt a fresh wave of anger wash over me. Clara wasn't Ryan's first victim, and she wouldn't be his last, unless someone stopped him. "There's more," Derek continued. "His wife doesn't know about any of it. Jennifer Blake, pediatric nurse at Maine Medical, married 15 years, 2 kids in middle school. By all accounts, a genuinely nice woman who has no idea her husband is a serial cheater." The information hit me like a physical blow. Ryan wasn't just destroying my marriage, he was destroying his own family. And he'd done it before, to other families, other wives who'd trusted him. "I want to meet her," I said. "Who?" "Jennifer Blake. She deserves to know what kind of man she's married to." Derek studied my face carefully. "You sure about that? Once you tell her, there's no taking it back. You'll be destroying a family." Ryan already destroyed his family. I'm just making sure his wife knows about it. Across the room, I saw Clara and Ryan having what looked like an intense conversation near the coat check. Clara was gesturing angrily while Ryan tried to calm her down. Other guests were starting to notice. Looks like our lovebirds are having their first public fight, Mia observed, joining our conversation. Perfect timing, I said. Derek, can you arrange a meeting with Jennifer Blake? I can try, but Ethan, I know. No going back. I'm done going back. The three of us watched as Clara's voice rose above the ambient noise of the party. Several guests turned to stare as she pointed an accusatory finger at Ryan, her professional composure finally cracking completely. I think that's our cue, I said. We walked over to where Clara and Ryan were having their argument, arriving just in time to hear Clara hiss, "This is all your fault. If you hadn't insisted on being so obvious." "Is everything all right?" I asked with false concern. Clara spun around, her face flushed with anger and champagne. "Everything's fine, Ethan. Just a work disagreement." "Didn't sound like work," Mia said sweetly. "Sounded personal." "It's none of your business," Clara snapped. "Actually, it is my business," I said, my voice carrying clearly in the sudden quiet that had fallen over our section of the ballroom. When my wife is having a public argument with her lover at a company party, it becomes very much my business. The words hung in the air like a bomb waiting to explode. Several nearby guests gasped audibly. Ryan went white as a sheet. Clara looked like she'd been slapped. "Ethan," she whispered, "what are you doing?" "What I should have done months ago," I replied. "Calling you out on your lies." Clara glanced around frantically, suddenly aware that we had an audience. "We can't do this here." "Why not? This is where you and Ryan have been carrying on your affair. Seems appropriate." Ryan finally found his voice. "Now wait just a minute." "No, you wait," I said, turning on him with 3 months of pent-up rage. "You wait while I tell everyone exactly what kind of man you are. The kind who seduces married women while his own wife is at home taking care of his children." The crowd around us had grown larger. I could see phones coming out, people recording what was clearly about to become the social event of the year for Portland's business community. "That's enough," Ryan said, stepping forward aggressively. Derek moved smoothly between us, his bulk making Ryan look like a child. "I don't think so, friend. The man's talking. You should listen." Ryan looked at Derek's imposing frame and wisely stepped back. I turned to address the crowd that had gathered around us. "Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like you to meet Ryan Blake, Meridian Communications star sales executive. For the past 4 months, Ryan has been having an affair with my wife, Clara Martin. They've been meeting at the Eastland Park Hotel, taking weekend trips together and laughing about what a fool I am." Clara made a sound like a wounded animal. "Stop," she pleaded. "Please." But I was just getting started. They've been so confident in their deception that they've been carrying on right here, at company events, in front of all of you. I have emails, text messages, hotel receipts, everything you'd need to prove it. The crowd was silent now, hanging on every word. I could see Clara's colleagues and clients processing what they'd just heard, their expressions ranging from shock to disgust to fascination. "The really sad part," I continued, "is that Ryan's wife Jennifer has no idea. She's at home right now, probably helping their kids with homework, thinking she's married to a decent man." Ryan lunged forward, his face twisted with rage. "You son of a bitch!" Derek's hand shot out, grabbing Ryan by the throat and lifting him slightly off his feet. "I warned you," he said conversationally. "Now you're going to apologize to the man and walk away, or I'm going to introduce you to the parking garage." Ryan's face turned red as he struggled against Derek's grip. Finally, Derek released him, and he stumbled backward, gasping. "This isn't over," Ryan wheezed. "Yes, it is," I said calmly. "Your career at Meridian is finished. Your marriage is over. and your reputation in this city is destroyed. All that's left is for you to decide whether you leave town quietly or wait for everyone to make your life hell. I turned to Clara, who was crying now, mascara running down her cheeks in dark streams. As for you, I'll have divorce papers drawn up by Monday. You can keep the car and whatever's in your personal accounts. Everything else is mine. Ethan, please, she sobbed. We can work this out. It didn't mean anything. It meant everything, I replied. It meant that you're not the woman I married. It meant that you're a liar and a cheat who destroyed our marriage for a few months of excitement. I looked around at the crowd of faces watching our personal drama unfold. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your attention. I hope you've enjoyed tonight's entertainment. I took Mia's arm and walked toward the exit, Derek following behind us like a bodyguard. Behind us, I could hear Clara's sobs and the buzz of excited conversation as Portland's business elite began dissecting what they'd just witnessed. As we reached the hotel lobby, Mia squeezed my arm. How do you feel? I thought about it for a moment, surprised by the answer. Free, I said. For the first time in months, I feel completely free. The aftermath of the party moved faster than I'd expected. By Saturday afternoon, video clips of the confrontation were circulating on social media. By Monday morning, Clara had been placed on administrative leave pending an investigation into her unprofessional conduct. By Tuesday, Ryan Blake had submitted his resignation. I spent the weekend at Derek's house, partly to avoid the media circus that had erupted around our story, and partly because I wasn't ready to face the empty house where my marriage had died. Derek's wife, Sarah, made me feel welcome, cooking elaborate meals and asking no uncomfortable questions about my plans. You know this is just the beginning, right? Derek said as we sat on his back deck Tuesday evening, sharing a bottle of his good whiskey. What do you mean? Clara's not going to go quietly. Neither is Ryan. They're going to try to spin this, make you look like the villain, probably claim you were abusive or controlling or something. I'd been expecting that. Let them try. I have documentation of everything. Documentation helps, but it's not everything. You need to be prepared for a fight. As if summoned by his words, my phone rang. The caller ID showed my lawyer's name. Ethan, it's Tom Bradley. We need to talk. Tom Bradley had handled the legal work for my consulting business for the past 5 years. He was a good lawyer and a decent man, which, in my experience, was a rare combination. What's up, Tom? Clara filed for divorce this morning. She's claiming irreconcilable differences and asking for half of everything, including your business. I'd expected the divorce filing, but the business claim was a surprise. On what grounds? She says she contributed to its success by providing emotional support and maintaining the household. It's a stretch, but not impossible in Maine. What about the affair? That's where things get interesting. She's claiming the affair started after you became emotionally abusive and controlling. Says you monitored her communications and threatened her. I felt a cold anger settle in my stomach. Even now, even after being caught red-handed, Clara was trying to rewrite history to make herself the victim. Can she prove any of that? Probably not. But Ethan, there's something else. Ryan Blake's wife filed for divorce yesterday, too. She's naming Clara as a co-respondent and asking for damages. That was unexpected good news. How much? $200,000. Plus, she wants Clara banned from having any contact with the Blake children. I smiled grimly. Jennifer Blake was clearly a woman who didn't mess around. There's one more thing, Tom continued. I got a call from a reporter at the Portland Press-Herald. They want to do a story about the party incident. Apparently, it's being seen as a symbol of workplace infidelity in the Me Too era. What did you tell them? Nothing yet. But Ethan, this could go either way. If you handle it right, you come out looking like the wronged husband who stood up for himself. Handle it wrong, and you look like a vindictive man who destroyed his wife's career for revenge. Set up the interview, I said. I'm ready to tell my story. Wednesday morning found me sitting in a coffee shop in the Old Port. across from Rebecca Martinez, the Press Herald's senior business reporter. She was a sharp-eyed woman in her 40s who had a reputation for fair but thorough reporting. "Let's start at the beginning," she said, turning on her digital recorder. "When did you first suspect your wife was having an affair?" I told her everything. The late nights, the changed behavior, the hotel receipt. I showed her printouts of the most damning emails and text messages, careful to redact anything too personal or explicit. "Why didn't you confront her privately?" she asked. "Because I realized that Clara had been lying to me for months. She'd made me look like a fool in front of her colleagues and friends. I decided that if she wanted to conduct her affair in public, she could face the consequences in public too. Some people are saying you went too far, that you destroyed her career out of spite." I leaned back in my chair, considering my words carefully. Clara destroyed her own career when she decided to have an affair with a colleague. I just made sure people knew the truth about what she'd been doing. What about Ryan Blake's family? His wife and children are also victims in this. You're right, they are, and they deserve to know the truth about what kind of man they were living with. Jennifer Blake is a good woman who was being betrayed by her husband. She had a right to know. Rebecca made notes on her tablet. "What's next for you?" "I'm moving forward with my life. I've got a business to run and a future to build. Clara made her choices and now she has to live with the consequences." The interview lasted an hour. When it was over, Rebecca shook my hand and said, "For what it's worth, I think you handled a terrible situation with more grace than most people would have managed." That afternoon, I met with Derek at his office to go over security arrangements for my house. The media attention had died down somewhat, but I was still getting occasional visits from reporters and curiosity seekers. "How are you holding up?" he asked. "Better than I expected. It's strange. I thought I'd feel worse about ending my marriage. Instead, I feel like I've been let out of prison." "That's probably because your marriage ended months ago when Clara started cheating. You just made it official." My phone buzzed with a text from Mia. "Drinks tonight? I have news." I showed Derek the message. "Want to join us?" "Wouldn't miss it." We met at a quiet bar in the eastern waterfront, away from the downtown scene where we might run into Clara's colleagues. Mia was already there when we arrived, nursing a martini and looking pleased with herself. "You look like the cat who ate the canary," Derek observed. "Better. I'm the cat who just watched two canaries destroy each other." She raised her glass. "Clara and Ryan had a screaming match in the Meridian parking lot this afternoon. Apparently, he blames her for ruining his career, and she blames him for being too obvious about the affair. Trouble in paradise? More like war in hell. Clara's been calling him nonstop, but he's not taking her calls. Word is he's already interviewing for jobs in Boston." "What about Clara?" Mia's smile turned predatory. "That's the best part. The partners at Meridian had a meeting yesterday. Officially, she's on administrative leave. Unofficially, they're looking for a way to fire her without getting sued. The company can't afford to be associated with this kind of scandal." I felt a moment of something that might have been pity for my wife. Then I remembered the emails where she'd laughed about my boring programmer life, and the feeling passed. "She brought it on herself," I said. "She absolutely did. But Ethan, there's something else you should know. Clara's been telling people that she's going to fight the divorce. She thinks she can convince a judge that you were emotionally abusive." Derek leaned forward. "What kind of evidence does she have?" "None, as far as I know. But she's desperate, losing her job, her reputation, and her marriage all at once. It's making her irrational." "Let her try," I said. "I've got 3 years of bank records showing that I supported her financially, phone records proving she was the one sneaking around, and witnesses who saw her behavior at the party. If she wants to fight, I'm ready." We spent the rest of the evening planning for the various legal battles ahead. By the time we parted ways, I felt confident that I could handle whatever Clara threw at me. I was wrong. Thursday morning, I woke up to find 2 police officers at my front door. "Ethan Cole?" the older officer asked. Yes. We have a restraining order here. You're not allowed to contact Clara Martin or come within 500 feet of her residence or workplace. I read through the paperwork with growing disbelief. Clara was claiming that I had threatened her with physical violence, that I had been stalking her, and that she feared for her safety. This is ridiculous, I said. I haven't even seen her since the party. That may be, sir, but the order is in effect until the hearing next week. I'd suggest you get yourself a lawyer. After the officers left, I called Tom Bradley immediately. She's playing dirty, he said after I read him the restraining order. But don't worry, these temporary orders are easy to get and hard to enforce. We'll fight it at the hearing. Can she really claim I threatened her? She can claim anything she wants. Proving it is a different matter. Do you have any witnesses to your interactions with her? Mia was with me at the party. Derek, too. They can testify that I never threatened Clara. Good. We'll get their statements and present them at the hearing. In the meantime, stay away from her. Don't give her any ammunition to use against you. That was easier said than done. Clara had apparently decided that if she was going down, she was taking me with her. Over the next few days, I heard through Mia that Clara was telling anyone who would listen that I was a controlling husband who had monitored her communications and threatened her when she tried to leave. The story she was spinning bore no resemblance to reality, but it didn't matter. In the court of public opinion, an accusation was often as good as a conviction. By Friday, I was ready to end this once and for all. The restraining order hearing was scheduled for Monday morning. I spent the weekend preparing with Tom Bradley, going over my testimony and gathering evidence to refute Clara's claims. Derek and Mia had both agreed to testify on my behalf, and we had security footage from the hotel that showed Clara leaving the party voluntarily after our confrontation. But I had something else in mind, something that would end Clara and Ryan's ability to spin this story once and for all. Sunday evening, I called Jennifer Blake. Derek had arranged the contact through a mutual friend, and Jennifer had agreed to meet with me. She was, as Derek had said, a genuinely nice woman who had been devastated by the revelation of her husband's affair. We met at a quiet restaurant in South Portland, away from the media circus that still surrounded the story. Jennifer was a petite woman with kind eyes and prematurely gray hair. She looked exhausted. "Thank you for agreeing to see me," I said as we sat down. "I should be thanking you," she replied. "If you hadn't exposed Ryan at that party, I might never have learned the truth. I'm sorry about your children. I know this must be hard on them." Jennifer's expression hardened slightly. Ryan should have thought about that before he decided to cheat on their mother. Again. Again? This isn't his first affair. I caught him with a colleague 5 years ago, but he promised it would never happen again. I was stupid enough to believe him. I felt a fresh wave of anger toward Ryan Blake. The man was a serial predator who had destroyed multiple families without a thought for the consequences. "What are you going to do now?" I asked. "I'm taking him for everything he's worth. The house, the kids, half his pension, everything. And I'm making sure everyone in Portland knows exactly what kind of man he is." "How?" Jennifer smiled grimly and pulled out her phone. "I've been documenting Ryan's affairs for the past 5 years. Photos, emails, credit card records, hotel receipts, everything. I was saving it for the right moment." She showed me a folder on her phone labeled Evidence. It contained hundreds of photos and documents that painted a picture of systematic infidelity spanning multiple jobs and multiple women. "This is incredible," I said. "Why didn't you use this before?" "Because I was trying to save my marriage. But after what happened at that party, after seeing how he treated you and your wife, I realized that some people can't be saved. They can only be stopped." "What do you want to do with this?" "I want to give it to that reporter who interviewed you, Rebecca Martinez. I want the whole world to know what Ryan Blake really is." I thought about it for a moment. Publishing Jennifer's evidence would destroy any remaining credibility Ryan had and make it impossible for him to find another job in Portland. It would also make Clara's claims about being the victim look ridiculous. "Are you sure?" I asked. "Once this comes out, there's no taking it back." "I'm sure. Ryan has hurt too many families. It's time someone stopped him." Monday morning arrived gray and cold, with the kind of November weather that made Portland feel like the end of the world. The restraining order hearing was scheduled for 9 a.m. at the Cumberland County Courthouse. Clara arrived with a lawyer I didn't recognize, a sharp-faced woman in an expensive suit who looked like she specialized in high-conflict divorces. Clara herself looked haggard, her usual polished appearance replaced by the hollow-eyed look of someone who hadn't been sleeping well. Tom Bradley had prepared me thoroughly for the hearing. The strategy was simple: let Clara tell her story, then systematically dismantle it with evidence and witness testimony. Clara took the stand first, describing a pattern of controlling behavior that supposedly stretched back months. According to her version of events, I had become increasingly possessive and jealous, monitoring her communications and threatening her when she tried to assert her independence. "He installed tracking software on my phone," she testified. "He followed me to work events. When I tried to confront him about his behavior, he threatened to destroy my career." It was a compelling story, delivered with just the right amount of emotion. If I hadn't lived through the real version of events, I might have believed it myself. Tom's cross-examination was surgical in its precision. "Mrs. Cole, you claim your husband installed tracking software on your phone. Do you have any evidence of this software?" No. I had the phone wiped after I left him." "How convenient. And you say he followed you to work events. Can you provide any evidence of this stalking behavior?" "He showed up at my company party uninvited. Actually, he was invited by Ms. Mia Turner, your best friend and a guest at the event. Ms. Turner will testify to that fact." Clara's lawyer objected, but the damage was done. Tom continued methodically dismantling her story, pointing out the lack of evidence for any of her claims. When it was my turn to testify, I simply told the truth. I described finding the hotel receipt, discovering the affair through Clara's own communications, and deciding to confront her publicly because she had been conducting the affair publicly. "At no time did I threaten my wife with physical violence," I said. "I was angry and hurt, but I never raised a hand to her or threatened to do so." Derek and Mia both testified to my character and to the events at the party. Their testimony painted a picture of a wronged husband who had handled a terrible situation with restraint and dignity. The judge, a stern-faced woman in her 60s, listened to all the testimony with apparent skepticism. When the lawyers finished their arguments, she retired to consider her decision. 20 minutes later, she returned with her ruling. "I find no credible evidence that Mr. Cole has threatened or stalked his wife," she said. "The restraining order is dismissed. However, I strongly encourage both parties to avoid contact with each other while their divorce proceedings are pending." Clara's face crumpled as the judge spoke. Her lawyer whispered something to her, but she shook her head violently. As we filed out of the courtroom, I heard her sobbing. I felt nothing. That afternoon, Rebecca Martinez's story about Ryan Blake hit the Portland Press-Herald's website like a bomb. Jennifer Blake had provided everything: photos, documents, testimony from other victims. The story painted a picture of a serial predator who had used his position and charm to destroy multiple families over the course of a decade. The response was immediate and devastating. Ryan's LinkedIn profile was deleted within hours. His professional references stopped taking calls. By evening, he had become unemployable in Maine. Clara, as Ryan's most recent victim and accomplice, was caught in the blast radius. The story made it clear that she had been a willing participant in the affair, not the innocent victim she had tried to portray in court. By Tuesday morning, Meridian Communications had announced that Clara Martin was no longer employed by the firm. I was in my home office working on a new project when Mia called. Have you seen the news? She asked. About Clara getting fired? Yeah, I saw it. Not that. Ryan Blake was arrested this morning. I stopped typing. For what? Apparently, one of his previous victims came forward after reading the Press Herald story. She's claiming he assaulted her at a company retreat 3 years ago. The police are investigating. I leaned back in my chair, processing this information. Ryan's downfall was now complete. Not just professional and personal, but potentially criminal. What about Clara? I asked. She's gone, packed up and left town sometime last night. Her apartment is empty, her phone is disconnected. She just disappeared. I felt a strange mixture of satisfaction and emptiness. For months, I had focused all my energy on exposing Clara and Ryan, on making them pay for what they had done to me. Now that it was over, I wasn't sure what to do with myself. How do you feel? Mia asked. Free, I said, and realized I meant it. For the first time in years, I feel completely free. That evening, I sat on my back deck with a glass of bourbon, watching the sun set over Portland's skyline. The house felt different now, not empty, but peaceful. The weight of lies and deception that had hung over it for months was finally gone. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. For a moment, I wondered if it might be Clara, reaching out from wherever she had fled, but the message was from someone else entirely. Mr. Cole, this is Jennifer Blake. I wanted to thank you for everything you did to expose my husband and your wife. Because of your courage, I was able to protect my children and start rebuilding our lives. I hope you find the happiness you deserve. I smiled and typed back, Thank you, Jennifer. I hope you and your children are well. As the last light faded from the sky, I thought about the man I had been 6 months ago, the nice guy who had trusted too easily and forgiven too quickly. That man was gone, replaced by someone harder but more honest. Someone who understood that sometimes the only way to stop bad people from hurting you is to make sure they face consequences for their actions. I had destroyed my marriage, ended 2 careers, and probably sent a man to prison. 6 months ago, the thought would have horrified me. Tonight, it felt like justice. Clara and Ryan had thought they could use me, mock me, and discard me without consequences. They had learned otherwise. The nice guy was gone, and I had never felt more alive.